Today, we are diving headfirst into a really explosive memoir, a story about a man born right at the heart of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And let me tell you, this is a story that's going to challenge just about everything you think you know about loyalty, about family, and even faith. And this quote, this is from the author himself, Mosab Hassan Yousef. Right from the get-go, he just lays out this central kind of heartbreaking paradox of his life. I mean, think about that sentence. It perfectly frames this incredible, almost unbelievable transformation. You know, a journey from being this celebrated son to a reviled outcast. So, to really get a grip on his journey, we first have to understand the world he came from. See, Mosab wasn't just any boy growing up in the West Bank. He was the eldest son of Sheikh Hassan Yousef, who just happened to be one of the 7 founders of Hamas. Yeah, so in his community, that basically made him royalty. He was the heir apparent. They even called him the Prince of Hamas. Now, growing up, Mosab really only saw one side of Hamas, the side his father seemed to embody. You know, the one that took care of the poor, the widows, the orphans. To him, it was an organization that provided real hope, real unity. But, as he explains it in his book, there was always this other, much more violent side, kind of lurking just beneath the surface. Yousef actually uses this really powerful metaphor to explain the ideology. He calls it a ladder. So at the very bottom, you've got acts of piety, charity, the good stuff. But he argues the fundamentalists are always climbing. They're always trying to get to that very top rung, which he says is a global holy war, or jihad. And while his father might have started at the bottom, the movement he helped create, well, it was relentlessly climbing higher and higher. And for a young Mosab, well, his path seemed totally set on that very same ladder. I mean, as a kid during the first Intifada, he was out there throwing stones. By the time he was in his late teens, he was absolutely convinced that armed struggle was the only way forward. And then he took that fateful step. He actually tried to buy weapons to start his own terror cell. But that path came to a sudden, violent stop. In 1996, right when he was trying to buy those weapons, he got captured, nabbed by the Shin Bet, which is Israel's internal security service. And this was a moment, he fully expected would just solidify his hatred for the Israelis. But instead, it completely shattered his entire world. So, there he is, in an Israeli detention center, and he's bracing himself for the absolute worst, for the brutality of his enemies. And yeah, he got it. But the real shock, what he never, ever expected, was what he saw from his own side. From the very people he'd always looked up to as heroes. Inside that prison, he saw something that just broke him. He saw Hamas turning on itself. He writes about watching an absolute horror as its own internal security wing accused members of being collaborators, and then systematically tortured them with a cruelty he just couldn't imagine. We're talking needles under fingernails, forcing false confessions, even murder. And that's when it hit him. The monsters weren't just the Israeli soldiers. They were inside his own movement too. Okay, so it's in this moment of total disillusionment, right in the middle of a pretty brutal interrogation, that a Shin Bet agent makes him this completely shocking offer. It was basically, forget being a prisoner. Come work for us. We want you to be a spy. And Mosab says, yeah, okay, I'll do it. But he had a secret plan, a vengeful one. His idea was to just play along, act like a collaborator, get the Israelis to trust him, and then, the very first chance he got, he was going to use their own weapons to kill his handler. I mean, his value to the Israelis was just undeniable, so they gave him a code name, the Green Prince. Green, of course, for the color of the Hamas flag, and Prince because of, well, his impeccable lineage. He was the perfect asset, right? An enemy prince who could just walk freely among the highest circles of power. So for the next 10 years, he lived this incredibly dangerous double life. To his own people, he was his father's right-hand man. He was his driver, his confidant, completely trusted. But all the while, he was secretly feeding a constant stream of intelligence to Israel. And this was information that he says prevented dozens of attacks and led to the capture of some really key militants. His mission had completely changed. Now, it was about saving lives. But while all this political betrayal was going on, something else was happening. Something even deeper, way more personal. It was a total transformation. See, this wasn't just about choosing a side in a conflict anymore. This was about him questioning the very foundations of his faith.
It all started after this chance meeting with a British tourist in Jerusalem. The tourist gave Mosab a copy of the New Testament. So he starts reading it, and he gets to the Sermon on the Mount, and he reads these words from Jesus. And he says he was just thunderstruck. I mean, think about it. In a world completely built on revenge and retaliation, this command to love your enemies, it was absolutely revolutionary.
And for him, this was kind of the final piece of the puzzle. This new moral framework, it just cemented his rejection of violence completely. It wasn't just about Hamas being brutal anymore. No, it was about this core belief that violence, no matter who does it, no matter the reason, could never be the answer.
So, this put him in an impossible position, a truly unthinkable choice. On one side, you have everything he's ever known, his father, who he genuinely deeply loved, his family, his entire people. And on the other side, this brand new conviction, an allegiance to his own conscience that put him in direct opposition to their whole struggle.
He chose his conscience. And getting out of there, well, that required one last very elaborate deception. To protect him and to protect his secret, the Shin Bet actually helped him stage his own escape. They orchestrated this massive, televised raid on his family's home, making him look like one of Israel's most wanted fugitives. Can you imagine? This whole act completely burned his reputation with his own people, but it's what ultimately saved his life and allowed him to flee to the United States. So once he was safe in America, he did what no one thought he'd do. He told his story. He published the whole thing in a memoir, fully confessing to being the Green Prince. And he did this knowing it meant he could probably never, ever go home again, and that his own family would be forced to publicly disown him.
And that really brings us to the final, lingering question his story leaves us with, right? Mosab Yousef's journey, all the way from the heart of Hamas to a follower of Christ. It really forces you to ask, what is true loyalty? Is it to your blood, your tribe, your nation? Or is it to the convictions you hold deep down, the things you believe to be true no matter what the cost? His life is just an incredible testament to the profound and often painful price of changing your mind.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise, find that signal, and pull out those insights that, well, might just change how you see things.
Exactly.
And today, we're tackling a story that's so unique, so full of twists and turns, it really makes you question everything you thought you knew.
It really does.
Imagine this. You're seen as, like, royalty by your own people, a royal prince, they call them. But then, in their eyes, you become a traitor.
Yeah. That internal conflict, that massive contradiction, that's really at the heart of our deep dive today, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And we're digging into this through Mosab Hassan Yousef's own words in Son of Hamas. I mean, the subtitle says it all. A gripping account of terror, betrayal, political intrigue, and unthinkable choices.
Quite the subtitle.
It is. And this book, it's not just like a biography. It feels more like a direct line into the mind of someone who's, right there at the top of Hamas.
But at the same time,
right. At the same time, he was a key informant for years for Israel's internal security, the Shin Bet. That position alone makes this source, well, pretty invaluable.
Okay, so with that incredible setup, our mission here is to walk you through Mosab's journey. It's almost like something out of a movie.
Totally.
We'll start with him growing up, literally in the thick of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, the eldest son of a Hamas founder, then track his, frankly, astonishing switch to becoming this Israeli intelligence asset, codenamed the Green Prince.
And then there's the other transformation.
Yes, the spiritual one. His conversion to Christianity, which nobody saw coming. We're not just listing events, though. We want to pull out those surprising facts, those fundamental insights that maybe shed some light on the sheer complexity of the Middle East.
Things that often go against the usual narrative you hear.
Exactly. And why should you care? Because his unique view gives you this, well, this profound understanding of how ideas fuel conflict. And maybe, just maybe, how personal change can open up unexpected paths to peace, even when it seems impossible.
It's a powerful lens.
So let's start at the beginning. His childhood, his family legacy. Mosab starts his story as the oldest son of Sheikh Hassan Yousef.
Who was, as you mentioned, one of the 7 founding members of Hamas. That's significant.
Immense. He grew up in Ramallah, West Bank, in what he describes as one of the most religious Islamic families around. He talked a lot about his grandfather, Sheikh Yusuf Daoud, the Imam of El Jania.
A more peaceful figure, it seems.
Yeah, from a rural village. But his father's early passion for Islam, his zeal, that really set the direction for the whole family, for Mosab's early life, definitely.
And Mosab gets into the origins of Hamas itself, which is fascinating. He traces it back to the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right, founded in Cairo, 1928, by Hassan al-Banna.
Exactly. And al-Banna's core idea was that the West was to blame for poverty, and the only hope, especially for young people, was getting back to the, quote, purity and simplicity of Islam.
The book points out a kind of duality there, doesn't it?
It really does. On one hand, you see what he calls the beautiful side of Islam in the early Brotherhood. Caring for the poor, widows, orphans, education, social work, really important community building.
Stuff that draws people in.
Absolutely. But then there's the other side, right from the start, the call to jihad, and not just defensively, but to establish a global Islamic state. That was always part of the vision.
That mix, the social good alongside the more radical goal.
Yeah.
That's key, isn't it?
It's crucial because it shows how these things get tangled up. Social welfare, community support, humanitarian stuff. It can be deeply linked with the ideology right from the beginning.
Makes it hard to separate them out.
Very hard. And it helps explain how groups like Hamas build and keep support. They're not just one thing. They come from this really complex mix of motivations, perceived needs. You have to understand that duality.
And all this ideology didn't happen in a vacuum, right?
Oh.
The whole geopolitical situation was shifting under their feet.
Oh, completely. You can't understand Mosab's world without looking at what happened after World War I. Palestine under the British Mandate.
Then the Balfour Declaration in 1917, supporting a national home for the Jewish people.
Which led to much more Jewish immigration, and as Mosab puts it, clashes were pretty much inevitable. Then, 1948, Israel becomes a state.
And hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled or were expelled. Many ended up in refugee camps.
Right, so you have this huge sense of loss, of grievance, displacement. It's incredibly volatile ground. Perfect, really, for the kind of ideologies that shaped Hamas and shaped Mosab's early years.
And Mosab uses this really striking metaphor to explain the ideology, particularly Hamas's view. He calls it the ladder of Islam. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, it's a powerful image. He describes it like a spectrum, right? A path someone might take. The bottom rung is basic stuff, like prayer.
Yeah.
Higher up, you get things like helping the poor, charity work, the benevolent side most people see and respect.
Makes sense.
But the highest rung in the specific framework he's describing is jihad. And here's where he says something really provocative. He says that a moderate Muslim is actually more dangerous than a fundamentalist because he appears to be harmless.
Wow. That's counterintuitive. What does he mean by that?
Well, it challenges that simple idea that someone's either good or bad, moderate or terrorist right from the start. He's saying radicalization is often gradual. It's a slow climb up that ladder.
So people don't just become extremists overnight.
Exactly. He points out that most suicide bombers he knew actually started out as moderates. They were drawn in step by step. It's this internal journey, often starting with good intentions, that makes it so hard to spot from the outside.
That gradual progression that really puts Mosab's own story into focus. His childhood, the first Intifada started in '87. That wasn't a normal upbringing.
Far from it. He talks about the local cemetery where he used to play soccer.
Yeah.
Quickly filling up with bloody corpses. That's his description. Just imagine that as a kid. So he and his friends, they start throwing stones at Israeli soldiers, checkpoints, whatever. He says it was about stirring things up, wanting respect as, fighters in the resistance.
A way to react, to find some kind of status in all that chaos.
Pretty much. And this environment inevitably leads to trouble. His first arrest, 1996, that's a real turning point.
And the experience sounds horrific.
Oh, it's chilling. He gives this first-person account of being tortured, physically and psychologically, at the Mobia Detention Center in West Jerusalem.
He mentions being bound, blindfolded.
Beaten, left in sewage, and forced to listen to Leonard Cohen's First We Take Manhattan over and over again.
That detail, the song, just adds this layer of a psychological torment.
It does. And adding to the weight of it all, it was the same prison his father had been held in years earlier. That kind of brutality, it leaves a mark. It changes you.
No doubt. And this awful experience, the torture, it didn't just end there. It led directly to this moment that completely changed his life's direction.
The awful.
Yeah. During the interrogation, an Israeli intelligence officer, Loai, makes this completely unexpected proposition. Cooperate with Shin Bet. Work for them.
And Mosab's first reaction.
Pure hatred. Revenge. His plan instantly was, say yes, pretend to cooperate, become a double agent, get weapons.
And kill them.
Kill his new handlers. That decision, born right out of that moment of pain and wanting revenge, set him on this path. nobody could have predicted where it would lead.
And this is where the story just becomes incredible. He takes the code name, the Green Prince. Green for Hamas, Prince for his lineage.
Right.
And he starts working for Shin Bet. But that initial fire for revenge, it starts to change into something else, something more complicated.
Because of his position.
Exactly. Being Sheikh Hassan Yousef's son gave him access like nobody else. He was inside the political wing, the military wing. He knew people in other factions.
An unbelievable vantage point.
It wasn't just spying. It was like having a direct feed into the heart of the resistance, intelligence that Shin Bet could never get otherwise.
And this access, combined with his shifting feelings, led to some incredibly tense situations.
Yeah.
Like the one with the suicide bombers.
Oh, that story is amazing.
Yeah.
He literally runs into 5 guys in a car, packed with explosives, ready to go.
What does he do?
He alerts Shin Bet, naturally. They intercept, confiscate the bombs. But here's the twist, and it shows you where his head was going.
Yeah.
He persuades Shin Bet not to just arrest or eliminate the bombers. He argues, let him manage them.
Become their handler.
Effectively, yeah. Turn them into his own intelligence source, right inside. And crucially, he told Shin Bet point blank, he wouldn't let them assassinate these guys. He said his conscience couldn't kill even a terrorist.
Wow. That's walking a razor's edge.
Yeah.
The risk, the moral complexity.
It's immense, and his insights kept leading to major breakthroughs for Israeli intelligence. He had this observation about Hamas,
What was that?
that Shin Bet was struggling because Hamas wasn't like a normal organization you could just dismantle. He called it a ghost, an idea.
You can't destroy an idea, you can only stimulate it.
Exactly. That understanding was key. And then he unmasked the real operators, the guys Shin Bet hadn't even really noticed.
The puppet masters, he called them.
Yeah. 4 guys, Aziz Cade, Salah Hussein, others. Seemingly normal, educated professionals. But they were secretly running the money, the military stuff, flying completely under the radar for years.
Finding them must have been huge.
Game-changing. It let Shin Bet target the actual brains of the operation. And this work eventually led to capturing Ibrahim Hamad.
The military leader in the West Bank, responsible for scores of deaths.
That's the one. Notoriously hard to find. Mosab's intelligence led right to him. And the description of the capture. Hamad surrendering in his underwear.
A stark contrast to the fight-till-death orders he gave his own men.
Quite the contrast. It was a massive blow to Hamas, made possible by Mosab.
But amidst all this high-stakes spying against Hamas, he was also doing something extraordinary regarding his own family.
Protecting his father. It's one of the most complex parts of the story. Sheikh Hassan Yousef was obviously a top target for Israel. Assassination was a real possibility.
So what did Mosab do?
He deliberately arranged for his father to be arrested multiple times.
Arrested. Why?
Because he knew Israeli prison was, paradoxically, the safest place for him. Safer than being out where he could be targeted by an airstrike or something.
That's incredible strategic thinking. Manipulating the system to save him.
He even orchestrated a fake-looking IDF raid on their house once, but tipped off Al Jazeera beforehand.
Why?
To make it a big news story. It ensured his father's safety through the publicity, and it actually strengthened Mosab's cover within Hamas. People would think, see, even his family isn't safe.
The layers of deception and the personal cost, it's hard to fathom.
It really is, this constant tightrope walk between loyalty, betrayal, survival.
And while all this external drama was unfolding, something equally profound was happening inside him, wasn't it? On a personal, spiritual level.
Yes. Throughout his time working with Shin Bet, he kept reading that New Testament he'd gotten from a Christian Bible study group earlier.
And a particular teaching hit him hard.
He says he was thunderstruck by Jesus' words. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
Love your enemies. For someone in his position.
It was revolutionary. He calls it the truth I had been searching for all my life. It completely reframed how he saw everything.
How so? Did it change who he saw as the enemy?
Profoundly. He started to believe the real enemies weren't Israelis or Palestinians, not defined by nationality or religion at all, but internal forces, things like greed, pride, and all of the bad ideas and the darkness of the devil that live inside us. The fight wasn't just out there, it was in here.
A massive internal shift for someone so caught up in an external conflict.
Huge. And this internal shift, combined with what he was seeing firsthand, it made him deeply question the hypocrisy around him.
Within Hamas.
Yes. He talks about seeing Hamas members brutally torture their own people in prison, He mentions a specific case, Akel Surur, just a farmer forced into false confessions.
That must have been deeply disturbing.
He saw fellow Muslims judging people as if they thought they were greater than Allah himself. And he contrasted that sharply with the message of humility and forgiveness he was reading in the New Testament.
So the gap between the ideal and the reality became unbearable.
It seems so. That direct confrontation with hypocrisy, with cruelty within the movement, it really pushed him away from his old beliefs.
And towards Christianity.
Yes. It wasn't sudden. He describes it as about a 6-year process, roughly 99 to 2005. But eventually he made the decision, an incredibly dangerous decision, obviously.
To convert.
To become a Christian. Shin Bet warned him, you do this, you could be killed. The cultural, the religious betrayal, it's immense.
But he did it anyway.
He was baptized in the Mediterranean Sea. He calls it divorcing his culture, publicly choosing this new identity, fully aware of the risks. That takes, well, extraordinary conviction.
So after this huge personal and spiritual change, what happened with his intelligence work? Did he continue?
He decided to stop. He reached this conclusion that the fight, the way it was being fought by both sides, arrests, interrogations, assassinations, it was a war that just couldn't be won that way.
An unwinnable war. That's a powerful realization from someone who saw it from both sides.
Absolutely. And he proved he meant it. Shin Bet actually offered to set him up, fund a big communications business for him in Palestine. Power, money, influence.
He turned it down.
Turned it down flat. Chose freedom, as he puts it, over power and money. He wanted out of that life completely.
So how did he get out?
It wasn't easy, took a lot of bureaucracy, but eventually he got permission to leave for the U.S. officially for medical reasons.
And before he left?
There's this poignant moment. He gives his Bible, the one he'd studied and marked up so much, to his childhood friend, Jamal, like passing on something vital before starting a new chapter. A quiet goodbye to his old world.
And his family, particularly his father. How did they react to the conversion?
Devastating news for his father. Sheikh Hassan Yousef apparently wept in his prison cell when he heard.
But he didn't condemn him.
No, and this is remarkable. He refused to publicly disown Mosab because he knew if he did, Hamas would see it as a green light to kill him. It was an act of protection, even in his own grief and disagreement.
Protecting his son, even after everything.
Yeah. And later, Mosab called his father from the U.S., and he finally told him everything. About the decade working for Shin Bet, about how he'd actually saved his life multiple times by arranging those arrests.
What was his father's reaction?
Mosab just describes this shocked silence on the line, a silence that said more than words ever could. Imagine hearing that from your son.
Unbelievable. The layers of loyalty, betrayal, love, it's all tangled together.
It really is. And Mosab's final message in the book, his takeaways, they really capture what he learned through it all.
What does he say?
For Palestinians and Israelis, he says simply, truth and forgiveness are the only solution. Not politics, not war. Truth and forgiveness.
And for world leaders.
He warns them. Don't just fight fanatical ideals with technology. You have to understand the motives, the emotions, the why behind it all, from the inside. Ideas need more than just weapons to be countered.
And his core point, the big takeaway.
It's this. As long as we continue to search for enemies anywhere but inside ourselves, there will always be a Middle East problem. He says his whole journey boils down to a deep longing for freedom.
Freedom not just from external forces, but internal ones too.
Exactly. Freedom from hate, from pride, from prejudice.
Wow. Mosab Hassan Yousef's story.
Yeah.
It really is an incredible testament to how much a person can change, even in the middle of the world's most stubborn conflicts.
From Hamas royalty to Shin Bet agent to follower of Jesus, it forces you to rethink everything you assume about loyalty, about betrayal, about what peace even means.
It's a living paradox, isn't it?
Completely.
Okay.
And that aha moment you mentioned, the idea that the real enemies, greed, pride, hate, are often inside us, that's such a different way to look at conflict.
Yeah, not just out there between groups, but in here, inside ourselves, moving past the simple us versus them.
Yeah. It's a much harder but maybe more hopeful perspective.
So the final thought for you listening. If someone like Mosab, who was so deeply embedded in that cycle of hate and violence, could find a path to actually love and forgive his enemies, what does that suggest?
What potential does that open up, even in situations that look completely hopeless?
And maybe closer to home.
Oh.
What courage might it take for you to look inside, identify your own internal enemies, maybe those old biases, those resentments, and perhaps be the one to take the first step towards truth and forgiveness in your own life, in your own conflicts?